In what should be a surprise to no one, The Last of Us Episode 3 is being subjected to some of that outside noise we always talk about. Because I can already see this episode being weaponized by certain people from all walks of life, all to support their own narratives. But if you want to know what is actually going on, then you came to the right place. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Because we live in this highly sensitive time where people typically react out of emotion, what happens is we get these words and labels being thrown about by people, mostly in an effort to get those precious clicks.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
But what I've noticed recently, especially through my whole Avatar 2 saga, is that I think the public is being manipulated by both the media and yes, other YouTubers into thinking that a show or a movie is something that it is not. And I think The Last of Us Episode 3 has now fallen into that conversation. For those that don't know, this episode takes us away from the Joel and Ellie perspective. And in their place, we see the story of Bill and Frank, two side characters from the game.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Only in the show, their whole story is expanded upon. And we get to see their entire relationship unfold throughout the course of this episode. Bill starts as a loner who fortifies an entire town after everything goes south. Only things don't go exactly how Bill planned, because the character of Frank stumbles upon his little safe haven. And over time, the two form a relationship with each other. That's right, these two characters are gay.
All I can tell you, sir, is that he's gay.
Just as their video game counterparts are insinuated to be. Now, some people are taking issue with this whole storyline because they say it's yet another Hollywood agenda rearing its ugly head. Now, given Naughty Dog's management track record, and the fact that the mainstream media is portraying this episode as, quote, a milestone for LGBTQ gamers, I can understand why some people who didn't watch it might jump to the conclusion that this episode is agenda driven. But if you have any knowledge of the game and you actually watch the episode for yourself, in reality that couldn't be further from the truth. Unlike a lot of the content that this is inevitably going to get compared to, this episode was actually well written, well acted, and doesn't come off as heavy-handed or preachy in any way.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And the difference is these characters actually feel like real people, and not just empty vessels being used in this cultural chess game. We have to understand the difference, otherwise it just becomes the boy who cried wolf situation. When you throw certain words around that don't really apply to this situation, those words begin to lose all meaning. So I can't stress this enough. Learn to tune out the noise and learn to judge things for yourself.
That makes sense.
Now, on the flip side of this coin, while this episode may have been well executed in a vacuum, I'm not sure that it 100% works as it pertains to the overall story being told. And what do I mean by that? Well, just because this side story was well executed doesn't mean that it's not jarring and a bit of a momentum killer based on what we've seen so far.
Oh, you're right. And when you're right, you're right. And you're always right.
Up until this point, I've enjoyed the little flashbacks and side stories that they've been giving us, in small doses as they expand the scope of this story and build on the pre-established lore. But for me personally, I never like it in any show when they leave the main story for an entire episode or even more. I'm not really sure that this story or this relationship warranted all that time. In fact, this feels like it could have been one of those internet exclusive episodes that I remember they used to do a little bit with The Walking Dead when that was at its height.
Because it's all part of the plan.
Look, we only have 9 episodes in this season, right? So to dedicate an entire episode to this story, which ultimately all it really does is lead us to the foregone conclusion that Joel and Ellie now have a truck. It does kind of feel like a waste of time overall.
Don't waste my time!
Actually, it did kind of remind me of that god-awful Daryl and Beth episode from I think like season 4 of The Walking Dead. The episode where it didn't really feel like it fit and kind of killed the momentum of the show. Now obviously, The Last of Us episode 3 was infinitely better from a pure quality perspective. But after the first 2 episodes, this episode does feel like a bit of a departure from what people have been enjoying. To me, there's a place for this story to be told, but not in a 9-episode run. Aside from Bill and Frank's story, we do get a little bit of relationship building between Joel and Ellie. You can kind of see them slowly warming up to each other. Of course, Joel experienced more loss this week with the death of Frank and Bill, and Ellie is the only one there to kind of pick up the pieces indirectly. Plus, we now know that they have a clear goal and a clear destination. They are going to find Joel's brother and then hopefully find a lab that can study Ellie's immunity. Quick note about Ellie, we do see a little bit of her darker side in this episode, where she kind of mutilates one of the infected people who are trapped under a pile of rubble, before she eventually just kills him outright.
But you one crazy ass.
Perhaps this is just the result of what this world will do to a person. She also stole a gun from Bill and Frank's that Joel doesn't know about, so we'll have to see how that little tidbit comes into play at some point as well. Overall, I did not enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed the previous 2. That's not to say it wasn't still very well done. On the bright side of things, it feels like they did get competent writers to craft this season, which again is refreshing and a huge surprise considering what I was expecting going in.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.